In the world of cellular therapy, quality and safety aren't just buzzwords, they are everything. And right now, we're diving deep into the brand new 9th edition of the FACT-JACIE Standards. Think of it as the ultimate rulebook for these life-saving treatments. So what's new, what's changed, and why is it so important? Let's get into it.
You know, this mission statement really gets to the heart of it all. We're dealing with an incredibly delicate, high-stakes process that is, for many patients, their last and best hope. So these standards, they exist to make sure that from the second a cell is collected to the moment it's infused back into a patient, every single step is buttoned up, secure, and held to the highest possible standard. It is all about patient safety, period.
So, just so we're all on the same page, what are we talking about here? Hematopoietic Cellular Therapy. It's an amazing treatment that uses these powerful stem cells, the ones you find in bone marrow or cord blood, that have this incredible ability to rebuild an entire blood and immune system. Because these therapies are so potent, the rules that govern them have to be absolutely ironclad.
Here's a great way to think about it. You would never, ever build a skyscraper without a detailed building code, right? You need those rules to make sure it's safe and won't fall down. Well, the FACT-JACIE standards are that building code for cellular therapy. They are meticulously designed and, just as importantly, constantly updated to make sure every single procedure is safe and sound.
And you know, this didn't just happen overnight. This whole thing is built on decades of people working together across the globe. You had FACT starting in North America, JICI in Europe, and since 2002, they've been a team developing these standards jointly. So this 9th edition, which goes into effect in early 2026, is really just the latest evolution in this incredible international partnership.
So what's actually new in this edition? We're going to break it down into 4 main parts. First, there's one really big structural shift. Then we'll look at some key updates for the facilities themselves. After that, we'll see a sharper focus on the people involved. And finally, we'll tie it all together and talk about why these changes really matter.
Okay, first up is probably the biggest single change in the whole 9th edition. They've really embraced this idea of from many, one, to simplify the most critical starting point of the whole process, collecting the cells.
So here's the deal. Before, in the 8th edition, things were a bit complicated. You had separate sets of standards depending on how the cells were collected, one for apheresis, another for bone marrow, and so on. Now, all of that has been merged into one single comprehensive collection section. This is a huge win for making things simpler and more consistent.
And why do this? Well, it really just boils down to clarity and consistency. When everyone is reading from the same playbook, it gets rid of any gray areas. It means every single collection facility, no matter what they're doing, is judged by the exact same high standard. And that directly cuts down on the risk of errors right at the very beginning.
So that big simplification at the start really sets the stage for the next round of updates, which are all about the facilities themselves. We're talking about refining the processes on the ground to really double down on quality and safety.
The 9th edition really tightens the screws on quality management. You've got clearer rules for audits, which helps catch problems earlier. There are better standardized labeling rules to prevent any dangerous mix-ups. But honestly, the really big one here is that last point. Collection sites now have to be qualified based on the specific risks and health of the donors they're serving. That's a massive step forward for protecting donors.
And the audit process itself gets a major overhaul. It's not just a checklist anymore. As you can see, it's a clear 3-step loop. First, you have to create a real audit plan. Then you document a report that doesn't just list problems, it digs down to the root cause. And third, and this is a game changer, you are now required to do follow-up audits whenever there's an occurrence or an incident. The whole mindset shifts from being reactive to truly proactive.
Of course, you can have the best facilities and processes in the world, but they're only as good as the people running them. And that's exactly where this 3rd set of updates comes in, with a much sharper focus on the personnel, the patients, and the donors who are at the very center of it all.
Science is moving at lightning speed, right? Well, the training has to keep up. This slide shows how the standards are making sure that happens. Physicians now need very specific training on the absolute cutting edge, things like immune effector cell therapies, or IEC, and even genetic modification. This isn't just about reading a book. It's about making sure doctors can safely wield the power of these incredible and incredibly complex new treatments.
But it's not just about the clinicians. The new standards also put a spotlight on the donor experience, and they ask a really critical ethical question. When a donor is a child, how do we make absolutely sure that their voice is heard in the process?
And the answer comes down to this really important word: assent. This is different from consent.
Legal consent, of course, still has to come from a parent or guardian. But assent is about seeking approval and agreement from the minor themselves in a way they can actually understand. It's a huge shift. It respects the autonomy of young donors and makes them an active part of the conversation about their own bodies.
Okay, just a quick but super important logistical point here, especially for program administrators. The cycles for accreditation aren't the same everywhere. So for FACT, it's a 3-year accreditation term. But for JACIE in Europe, it's a 4-year cycle, and they now call it certification to line up better with European regulations. So we've talked about structure, facilities, and people. But let's zoom out for a second. What does all of this add up to? Let's connect the dots and look at the big picture impact these updates are going to have.
When you really boil it all down, the impact of this 9th edition is all about 3 things. And look at the breakdown here. The biggest slice of the pie, 40%, is about making therapies safer. That tells you everything you need to know about the #1 priority. The rest is about creating clearer, more efficient processes, and critically, making sure the entire system can adapt to all the amazing innovation happening in the field.
And that really is the ultimate takeaway here. These standards are not some static document sitting on a shelf collecting dust. They are a living, breathing framework that is designed, on purpose, to evolve right alongside the incredible pace of science. It's how we make sure that safety never ever gets left behind by innovation. And that leaves us with a pretty big thought for the future. We're walking into an era of hyper-personalized, genetically engineered medicine that was pure science fiction just a decade ago. The treatments of tomorrow will be more powerful and complex than anything we've ever seen. So the question isn't if these standards will need to adapt again, but how they will continue to evolve to protect both the patients receiving these miracles and the scientific pioneers who are pushing the very boundaries of what's possible.